All right, time to get this show started. Thursday night. Working on the tower defense game in GDevelop. Got to make some progress because I have been busy. Cheers, folks. Happy Thursday night. It's Friday Eve if you're in the US area. And for tonight, BTM, how you doing tonight? You familiar with GDevelop, the no-code, quote-unquote, game engine? I'm going to launch a preview and see where I left off. If y'all are in the US, hopefully you had a good Labor Day weekend this past weekend. Oh, man, I almost didn't, but I'm glad I did for that reason. It's been a long day, but I figured I'd hop on anyway. I had a stream scheduled, and I'm committed, man. I was an hour late to it, but I'm committed. Do you are you a dev yourself? It's my fire tower. Let's make sure this is still working. All right, still working. I think I disabled the the meteor because it was annoying me a little bit. Nice. I've used a couple of other game engines, but I really love GDevelop. It's just so easy to get a project stood up, you know. I know that you get a little more fine-tuning when you're doing the raw code, but I don't know. It's just super nifty. All right, fire towers are a check. Let me re-enable the meteor on those and let's see, fire. That would be down here. Right there. Okay, if I re-enable that, we should get meteors coming off of those fire towers. Stream delay's crazy. Let me double check. That's my bad. I think it's set to normal latency. I'll need to start setting that to ultra low latency. But it's not going to let me do it live. Alright, checking that the meteor towers are still firing off. I think it's every 9 seconds or so. It's going to launch a rock out the top. It's going to tween it upward and then over and explode. I want to get some sound effects put in here, but I don't want to polish too early. So we've got the explosions. I want to check what those rocks are aiming at. I think it was tweening toward the center, but I recently added a point onto the enemies, which is out in front of them. So that would be what my water tower was actually. What is my camera doing anyway? Why is it not streaming GDevelop? No one wants to see that much of my face. What is going on, OBS? All right, there we go. Yeah. And OBS and YouTube, the latency and the camera. It's a mess tonight. All right, as I was saying, I'm looking for the targeting for that meteor effect that we just saw. So my enemies, I have a point on them. Let me double check what it's called here, but I think it was on the backer, the medium one right here. If I go to my points, tiny GDevelop. Usually the bugs are confined to my game, but the bugs tonight are all over the place. Okay, stay. It's like my dog, it won't behave. Yeah, malware. I wouldn't even be surprised if the malware was my own game ruining my computer. All right, I put some points out here that I'm going to aim at. So these are out in front of the enemy, so that as it's moving forward at a pretty quick pace, if a rock is flying at that fixed point, by the time it hits the point, they'll be relatively at the same location. So that is called rain point. What is this other one? Center. The center is no longer at the center. That should be at 25-25. Move over. All right, so that is rain point. It's not the right name, but we'll just go with it. So I want the meteor to target that point instead of the center. So we're going to go with to the position of so it tweens upward, and then after the upward tween, I thought there was a second tween horizontally, so that would be well, I guess we'll just go with this. If I double check the water tower area, BTM, do you do any of the GDevelop game jams? Here we go. Why did I disable the water? Okay. So those are going to this point right here. That's what I want. Point X, rain point. Too scared to do the game jams. Feeling of having to do something within it's extremely scary and stressful. I've done a handful of them, and some of the ones I've done were 48-hour game jams. And that's basically like deciding that you don't want to enjoy your weekend. And at the end of the weekend, submitting something at the last minute that is like a little turd that you polished just a little bit, and now you have to give it out there to the public to critique. Interestingly, though, a game jam is where I got the idea for this game. The theme was light, and so this game is about darkness literally, like light serves as your resource, it serves as your health, and it serves as your ambient light so you can see. So the enemies are stronger when it's dark. So that was one good thing that came out of a game jam for me. The rest of it was all stress. Okay. Lots of stress. But I guess we get that with any kind of game dev, don't we? We just kind of pick that poison. All right, here we are. Hopefully this is correct. And all this is doing is moving that meteor just slightly out in front of the path of the current enemy. So I'm going to check that now and see if it seems to be firing out in front. How do I feel about the 3D? I've been watching the 3D, assuming you're talking about here in GDevelop. I'm rooting for it. I have yet to really use it. So I'm watching from the sidelines. I'm just watching the mayhem go. But I think that they're, definitely doing a good job. How do you feel about it? Have you played around with it yet? I've just been too busy with this game, to be honest. Okay, boom. I want... Yeah, you've been waiting for it for your... I know, it's like a really good time. For anyone who's like starting out with GDevelop, it's a great time to get in on the ground floor because they've made a lot of quality of life changes, haven't they? Like the like even for 2D, just getting all the assets in like one batch. They got the tile mapping, lots of stuff. The group variables. Okay, so what I'm watching right now is this rock is going to fly out, and it's supposed to target... Let me see here. Pick the enemy that is nearest to the end, which is actually a little bit funny, because if you're familiar with that function, the enemy that is nearest to a thing, this is a tower defense, and they're going on a pathway, but it's going to pick literally the nearest to it, which in this case, my tower is on the target. So the nearest enemy is probably like one of these guys up here. And I'm watching as this rock goes. Where is it going to crash exactly? Right there. So that was in fact the closest. I think... I might need to speed it up or create another point that's even further out in front, because that still hit kind of behind. It's going to be an AoE, but it's not quite getting what I'm looking for. You're doing some VR with it, but just now learning JavaScript. VR would be dope. I haven't created anything VR, but VR is basically like the next stage in realism, isn't it? So we got 3D, and it's finally looking pretty realistic. And VR has been around for a while technically, but what we can do with it now is pretty crazy. And honestly, I don't know a whole lot of raw JavaScript myself. I've done some web dev. I'm more familiar with like C++ and Java, but I want to learn some more JavaScript so I can maybe do some extensions here in GDevelop. You got the basic rendering. Yeah, I bet there's a bit of a learning curve, but I'm pretty confident that once you get it down, you'll be able to just run with it and do a lot of things. I bet that's how it'll go. Okay, so what I was doing was the point. So I guess there is one way for me to track which enemy is furthest along the path. Mind-blowing. It's probably like a fire hose of information. So I think one way I can track the enemy that's furthest along the path will have nothing to do with location, but maybe if I just use a variable to track how long they've been alive, I can just use whichever enemy has the longest time on screen, basically. So I could do that. I think I'll take that approach. I'm not going to do it just now. It'll be a little bit tedious, but I think I'll use that in the long run to track actually farthest along the pathway. And then, but I'll have to apply it to all of them. So for now, I wanted to maybe speed up that attack. So right now it's occurring over, I'm using the ease in quad, which if I double check, let me pull up a little cheat sheet here. It's a white screen, so fair warning. Ease in quad. That is this one here. So basically what happens is it'll slowly start to move toward the enemy and then really just zip at the end. Yeah, man. That's on easings.net. Your current project is a 3D sandbox game that lets users mod stuff during the multiplayer session. That sounds pretty dope. Is that like... like when you say to mod stuff, what would be the kind of objective of the game? Is it like a fighting game? Is it like a co-op, like construction type of game, or? You know, like a GDevelop inside of a GDevelop. Well, sounds pretty cool. Keep me posted on your progress. I'd be interested in checking it out. Get something up on itch.io or wherever you post it. Or the GDevelop site. Alright, so that was occurring over 0.5 seconds. But that's happening after... the initial tween finishes. So I think that initial tween is probably taking too long, and that one is up here. So the moment the meteor is created, it's going to tween upward over the tower for 1 whole second. Let's drop that by half a second. That will help with the accuracy a little bit because it just takes just too long. By the time it gets out there, the enemy's you know, a whole body length away. So let's give this a test. We're watching The Rock. Not Dwayne The Rock. You and your friend are messing around with UWP exporting and Xbox testing. Nice. Honestly, I'm not even that far along with my project, but it's good to get an early start on that because I hear it can take a while. Especially if you're doing it yourself, if you're doing the port. I've been working on this project. Let me think. If I go to my itch.io page, I'll know, because it was from that game jam. That was 7 months ago. So that was, what month is it now? I guess February. That's when I created the seed idea. Having a lot of issues, are you? I would not be surprised. Here's the crappy game jam one, the 24-hour game jam I made this in. So you could get your map, and the assets were, yeah, exactly. I planted it, and my plants here are a little bit more 2D, but yeah, it's got 3 basic levels, you know. And this one was way rougher. Like the tower placement was rough. It was on a grid that wasn't quite working, so you can't place towers where you think you should be able to, and all that kind of stuff. You have to click on the loot. I rather enjoyed it. It's just not very smooth, but it's a two-day game, so. And I'm losing horribly. Let me see if I can actually pass the level so I can show you the next level. I'm gonna lose. I have another whole wave. Who made this game? These devs suck. Okay, I'm getting my light back. And how many waves are there? 6. We're on the final wave. And I got an upgrade. Upgraded tower. Oh, but I lost anyway. At the last second. Oh, there's level 2. So I got it. It was just the wrong... I don't even know my own game. So level 2, very similar. And let's see, I think it's 500 to do an upgrade, so I would need more enemies to come in, then I can click on one of these and it'll do an upgrade. And so this is the prototype for what I'm currently working on. It's way rougher. It's just where I got the idea. And next wave. The 3rd level is the last level, and then I'll go back to the dev part of this. And so many bugs. Like, I don't know what those guys are doing. Just dancing around. 10 waves. It's so goofy. I think they were doing like a tween between points rather than using pathfinding, and that's why it was kind of messed up. I think I messed up the tween points. So tweening from A to B to C. I never did figure out what was going on there. I just switched tactics altogether. It's so funny. But if I can get the 3rd tower, it's gonna mow them down. I think it's 1,000. There we go. Smooth sailing now. Yeah, you have a good night, man. I'll catch you later. Good luck on your VR stuff. All right, so finishing up the last wave here, I'll be on to the last level of this prototype game. Then I'll be getting back to my actual work that I need to do tonight on my current game. Once these guys die. There we go, level 3 now. Now this one required the most planning. And it had a couple specific placements that really give you the advantage. And I can't remember exactly what they are. I'm going to try these. And this one does come with a turret up here on the top. Yeah, I think... Oof, nope, I died. But that's the prototype. Let's get rid of that. And back to work. Okay, what's my water tower looking like? So this one is tracking a little bit funny because, funnily, whatever the word is, because the beam, the straight beam will target differently than the water stream at different times. At the moment it's working fine actually. But let's see, like right there they're targeting two different ones, which is a little odd. I'm gonna probably do away with the beam and keep the stream of water. But I need to check why the stream is targeting differently. So let's move over to the water tower. And okay, so there's the stream, and the stream is targeting. It's targeting that rain point, which is fine. But it's picking the enemy that is nearest to itself. What is the beam targeting? It's supposed to be targeting the same thing. So the enemy... Maybe this is why. So I had it set to target the group. Instead of targeting the group, I'm going to have it target my specific sort of testing, just one single enemy that I'm testing. So I can make all the changes on that one enemy, and then if I like it, I'll apply it to the rest. That might be the difference. So if that's the case, then that'll be pretty easy. But I'm trying to make sure that this actually makes sense. So if we have a water tower on the scene, then for each instance of them, pick the enemy backer that is nearest it and draw the line. And then it does a check for the variable on an enemy. But it seems like that check should be on the enemy backer rather than the enemy itself. So let me pull this up again, just make sure that I didn't change anything. Because that seems like something that shouldn't work, but it seems to work. It's kind of funny that way. So if I call in the enemies, and again, I'm watching really watching to see if the stream of water drops is going to the same enemy or if they're splitting apart. So right there, it's fine. Right there, it's not. So it's mostly fine, but a little bit indecisive. Interesting. All right. I think that'll be fine. And then there is something I was gonna do, and it's gonna be kind of a debuff, but anytime the enemy's on fire and then it gets hit with the water, and unless you have a power up, then it's going to douse the fire. So I could go ahead and implement that. So to do that, it'll just be a matter of some variables. And then I could also create a splash, like a splash zone, wherever the water's hitting. So I could look for a sprite to do that. Let me move this stream out of the way. Let's see. What was my latest? Let me double check something here. I'm gonna do a little bit of asset hunting. Might have been on here. Need to log in. Oh, great. There we go. All right. Let's look for. Now this is where I got some of my art assets already. Let's look for splash. I have no idea what I'll find here. Let's start with free. No free ones. Okay, let's look at all of them. No, not audio. We need sprites. Kind of semi-realistic. And if I can't find anything here, I'll just use a particle emitter. I just have so many in the game already. Those are too cartoony. Too cartoony. Alright. Never mind on that. I could look on itch.io real quick. Let's look for assets. We'll do 2D. I guess sprites. Let's go with animation. Let's see here. Because it's almost like if I grab one of these and it's continually created. There's always a possibility it could look semi-decent. I'm always just a little wary if it's too cartoony. These are kind of cool though. I like this art. It's good art. Just a little bit pixely for what I'm looking for. It might be tough to make it look to fit the game. So I think I'm just gonna stick with the particle emitter for now. So let me go over here, add new object. Let me see. I might even just need to like do this a different way, because the particle emitter would have to keep moving and then I'd have to track it. But maybe I'll take this raindrop. Let me duplicate that. Yeah, I guess I'll just call it raindrop 2. And I guess I'll just create this at the location when it hits the enemy, and then it'll splash like upward and then fall down. Nick Enims, how you doing this evening? It's Friday Eve if you didn't know, so that's always a good thing. All right. Let me try something here. Basically, for every water drop, it hits and it'll basically like hit and splash and then fall. So I can add gravity, or I could tween it. I'm glad you're here. Glad to hear you're doing well. Hopefully it's been a good week for you. All right, where the rain. Everyone spells your name wrong. How do they spell it? I'm looking for where the rain hits the enemy. I think it's going to be enemies and water. Up above, right here. So water beam. Oh, no, I didn't add it here. So oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, they never pronounce it right. Pronounce it Enos or something like that. Enice. Man, we game devs do not get names right, do we? We're about as good with names as we are with variables. Are you a dev yourself? Okay, so I do not have an event for when the raindrops hit an enemy. Let me go back down. I need to find out where they end. I think it's going to be a... whenever the tween ends, then I create a new thing. So it's scaling. This is occurring over 0.75 seconds. So 3/4 of a second. And so it's going to delete automatically at the end of the tween. Each drop will delete at the end of the tween, which means that I won't be able to use its X and Y coordinate at that point because it'll be gone. And I could run an event that checks for each raindrop, but I feel like it's going to get expensive because there are quite a lot being generated constantly, but I could test it. So I could do a for each instance of raindrop. Let me see if I have that. For each instance of raindrop. Doesn't look like I've got one of those. Oh, it's rain underscore drop. Okay, so I'm just going to add one here. What is this underneath? Repeat for each instance of the tower. Don't need that. It could be under this one up here. So I'm going to shift D. Add new event. Where'd it go? For each instance of towerhead water living on the scene. Why did I put the Fist of the Heavens under that one? Is it even working? Need to check my Holy Tower and make sure my Fist of the Heavens works. It looks like it's in the wrong spot. So it should shoot lightning. Boom. Weirdly, it is working. No idea how that happened. Because that is connected to a repeat for the towerhead water. I'm very confused, but it's working, so I'm not going to mess with it. Anyway, here's my new event. So let me drag that upward. Put it right about here. And add for each raindrop. And I'll also add a check for if we have raindrops on the scene. So if the number of raindrops is greater than 0, that's the condition. Then let's see, we need to start a timer. When we create the object, let's start a timer. And we'll call it create splash timer. All right. And then, so for each raindrop, we're going to check that timer, the timer value. And let's see, for the timer value of the drop, the create splash timer, if it is greater than or equal to, let's say 0.7, let's try 4. It might be too close, I don't know. But the lifetime of the raindrop is going to be 0.75. So let's try 0.74. And we're going to try to create a little splash droplet at that location or at that point in time. So it'll be very similar to this stuff. We'll copy and paste that, and then we'll just change it over to the new drop, the droplet, which is number 2. And that'll be created at the position of the raindrop. All right, center X and center Y. And then yeah, so I'm trying to decide how I want to do this. Basically, I think I want to shoot it upward and then shoot it upward at a random angle and then let gravity do the trick. So like it should fall. And so below this, let me check. I could also do a tween. But I'm not sure that would look the best. So I might need to add gravity to this. Add behavior. I think it's going to have to be platformer or physics engine 2. Let's see here. Dynamic. Should be... Let me double check something here. Almost done for the night. Just a short night tonight. GDevelop physics 2.0. Let's pull this up. We will consult the documentation, people. Consult the documentation. See if we can get a splash going on, and then we'll call it a night. Short and sweet. Okay. Gravity. Yeah, people seem to pop in and pop out, but, you know, it's just the way it goes sometimes. Everyone's pretty busy these days. Can't say I blame them. But, you know, I appreciate every viewer. I like having people to hang out with. Just chill. Game dev and chill. Alright, so we're going to do some gravity here. Oh, I forgot. That's what I was looking for, was the dynamic. So dynamic is affected by gravity forces and velocities. Static is not affected by gravity, so I do not want static. And then kinematic would be like static, but can be moved through its velocity. Yeah, exactly, and it's kind of delayed too. The number of people, it's kind of laggy. YouTube is a little bit laggy, so it bounces around. It's always fun to have people though. And to be honest, it's like I was going to be doing this work anyway, so might as well just turn the webcam on, and if people like to join along, then the more the merrier. So for gravity, we're going to start with, let me see, a scale of 1. Scale. Gravity scale. Okay, so whatever the world gravity is. Scale of 1. We could set it to maybe like... We'll start it at 1, alright? And hit apply. So just to test that real quick, I can throw a couple out here on the scene and see how fast they fall. Hopefully not before we can see the preview. Okay, that looked pretty good. I also need to add, if it doesn't already have it, destroy outside. So if it's 100 pixels or more outside of the margin, it will delete itself. That is good. So with that being said, let's just go ahead and test this and see if they're creating and then of course falling. And then after that, if it works, I can do some other things with it. Okay, I'm not seeing them. Let me pull up the debugger here. Mr. Debugger, and see if we have any on the scene. This is telling me there are exactly none. So it's not creating any. Yeah, someone else was talking about that to me, and I found I misconfigured one of the settings on tonight's stream. So I put it on normal latency. So next time I'm going to set it to ultra low latency. So it's kind of a trade-off. It's a sacrifice between the quality of basically the recorded video afterward versus how fast I can stream it live. So it's my fault. I set it to the wrong setting. So it's not on your end. It's between me and YouTube. Okay, so it was not creating them. Let's find out why. So I know I set it pretty close to the end of the life cycle. If the number of raindrop living on the scene is greater than 0, then repeat for each instance. Let me see. So that is a child of repeat for each instance of the tower. I think it needs to not be a child of that event. I think it needs to be a child of the grandparent or whatever. So let me move that upward, or promote it rather. Let's see where that went. I think it went downward. So now that is a child of this. So if there is at least a water tower, then it's going to do the check. Let's see if that did the trick. All right, place the tower, select water, call in the enemies. Doesn't look like it's working. Let me double check the debugger here. Yeah, it's saying there are none. Let's figure out why. If the number is greater than 0, then repeat for each one. If the timer is greater than or equal to 0.74 seconds, create the raindrop 2 at the raindrop's original center X and Y. And then if it's created, gravity should take over and do the work. But why is it not being created? So if it's not being created, it could be to do with the timer. So I could try lowering this. Maybe it's just too close. Maybe it's not really accurate enough internally. Not entirely sure, so I'm just gonna do some trial and error here. You want to be a game dev, you're planning on remaking one of your childhood games into 3D, but you know nothing about coding. Well, if you know nothing about coding, have you done any type of, you know a little bit of Blender, but nothing about game making? So coding or programming in general is really all about problem solving. And so kind of like what I'm doing right here. You think about a task that you want to do, right? And what I like about this particular game engine is it's no code. It's a no code game engine. So what that means is it's kind of like pseudo code. It's more like sentences. And the JavaScript is abstracted away behind it, which means you're not really typing in the JavaScript. The JavaScript is managed behind the scenes. So, like, let's go up to the top here, and I'll just give you a very quick example here of how some things might work. So, you say, as soon as I open a game, where'd it go? Lost my preview window. So you would say, like, at the beginning of the scene, and literally you would, in GDevelop, you would just literally say that right here on the left. Then on the right, you say, at the beginning of the scene, do these things. And what are these things? Well, I'm creating some objects, I'm setting some numbers, I'm starting some music, right? And so it depends on what language you're using, but in general, you're trying to figure out the logic. So you say, if it's the beginning of the scene, play music. If it's level 2, then add the level 2 objects, basically, right? And so however you decide to make your game or however you decide to program, programming at its core is about thinking about problem solving in a logical sequence. And it doesn't matter if you're doing JavaScript or C++ or C# or whatever. It's all about logical sequence of events. And so GDevelop is really beginner friendly. This is totally free. You can literally run it in a browser. You can run it on your phone. You can download the desktop app like I have. And it's relatively easy to get started because you don't need coding experience. You'll just learn how to problem solve. And like Blender or any of those other softwares, there's always a learning curve, but this one is a little bit less steep than some of the others. And I need to restart this. Let me save it out. In fact, I have some tutorials on how to get started as well on my page. Feel free to check those out. I don't have too many videos, so it's pretty easy to find. But they're designed to be absolutely beginner friendly. So you're welcome to those. Let me restart this though. It's giving me some problems. And there's the error right there. Almost out of time here. And this engine does support 3D. So if you're trying to remake a childhood game in 3D, it is possible. In most engines, but this one included. All right. What was I doing? I was testing a scene. Okay. There we go. We're getting the splash, people. We're getting the raindrops falling when it hits the enemy. All right. Obviously, that's not the final look. It's a little goofy. I'm going to tweak some things, maybe make them smaller. But we have the logic in place. The targeting is a little bit off. Can you import Blender models in the engine? Yeah, you can do 3D. So if you have a 3D game, you can do 3D models. So I'm almost done here. I had to get the raindrops to work. Yeah, they can see your hand. So yeah, you can use 3D models. Yeah, it's basically like Scratch. The engine I'm using is basically like Scratch. No offense, you don't code, you just drag stuff. You don't just drag stuff. I mean, the logic is in a couple of places. So I have my objects over here in a panel, right? So these objects, it's kind of like, it's still object-oriented programming because it's JavaScript on the back end. So, like, let's say for one of my enemy objects, which is actually really simple looking, I would open up that object here. Like, let's say this enemy. It has some properties here, like the name, but then it has behaviors. So like health, and then you configure the parameters. And then you add the variables in here. And so this is like anything that's not already in a predefined behavior like health and armor and stuff. Anything you want to make for yourself from scratch, like you said, then you know, like, is it being hit? True or false? You add that in there. And you can also add effects to specific objects as well, like outlines or blurs or glows, pixelate. So you have a lot of parameters in there that you can configure. Cancel out of that. And then you can do additional logic here in your actual script. Probably make the drops just lines and make them faster. Feel that would look better. Probably make them just like little lines. Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. So to make them faster, I would probably just increase the gravity here. So let me go down to that. And this might be the last thing I do for the night before I hop off. Got an early morning. So let me go to the gravity here. I think I just need to... I'm not sure exactly. Let's try 2 and 2. Trying to remember the difference between the density and the scale. The world has a predefined scale, predefined amount of gravity, and the scale is basically just like that amount times whatever that you put there. So this should make it quite a bit heavier. Bopple Billy, how you doing this evening? Yeah, it's like from scratch, but more complex in some features. So it's like simple for a game engine, but it's enough to, it's like more than like just opening up the console and typing some code into console, right? So it's a little bit more user-friendly than that. I started in a game engine called Greenfoot, and that's basically like super basic in Scratch. This is a step above that. All right, let's see if the raindrops fall any faster. And I could also add a little tween. So let's go back down to the raindrop. Last thing, I swear, before I get in trouble and I need to hop off. So raindrop 2. So for each, we'll do a for each raindrop. Let me add an event here. That needs to be all the way out by itself. And then add for each object. This will be for the raindrop 2. And I'll also add, if there are any on the scene, so we're not wasting resources on it. Right here, drag that under. Then for each one, we want to, I'll tween the size to make them smaller as they go. Let's see. Size. Okay, so we're going to tween the size, actually the scale rather. Hold on, that's not the tween. Tween. Scale. So we want that to go down to like what, maybe a quarter of its current size. And we'll just do that linearly over, we'll just say 0.5 seconds. It can be pretty fast. Destroy the object when the tween finishes. No. Scale from the center. Yes. The tween identifier can just be scale. And hit OK. So they should be pretty small coming out. They're going to start off at the normal size and then scale down quickly. We can also add a slight glow to them so we can see them. Actually, let me double check. Okay, it doesn't have any effects. Let's add a little glow here. Something like that. Pretty small. And apply. Later on, I'll probably add like a light to it. Yeah, appreciate it. I'll need all the luck I can get. And actually, you're not talking to me. Hypno to Chris. I can't even read tonight, man. What kind of a game are you making for your first game? And what game engine are you using? We're all going to need all the luck we can get. Okay, let's give this a test, see what our raindrops look like. All right, they're falling faster now. They're getting smaller. You made a slime and couldn't fix it. The save button after 30 minutes and got off. Couldn't even code anything. It goes that way sometimes. Probably more often than most of us would like to admit. A wave defense game with Game Maker. Nice. Game Maker's a good, it's a good first engine. Well, stick with it. You're going to have a lot of days where you feel like you're getting zero progress. Just in my opinion, in my experience. And then you're going to look back, like let's say you do like 10 days of really banging your head against the wall. And then on the 11th day, you're going to look back and realize you can actually do a few things. All right, I'm going to come back and I'm going to work on these raindrop splashes in the future. I've got them kind of in the game now. So this is what you would consider placeholder art, right? So I'm not saying this is like what I want to put on my Steam store, front page, but it does tell me that the game is functioning as intended. And then later on, if I want to come in with, a more professional look, that'll be much easier to implement. That looks good. Now just make the texture lines to the streamer. Are you talking about that blue line underneath, or are you talking about the raindrop stream? I gotta go too. Hypnotic Chris, if I say that right, you have a good night. Take care. Let's see. So, yeah, I'm going to add some more effects to these. I'm going to play around with it. We're really close. So, let me delete these unneeded raindrops on the scene here. Yeah, on the raindrop. I think that's a great idea. So I'm going to put that on my to-do list for next time. And that's pretty much it for tonight. So my regular streams are this time every Thursday. But I'll sometimes stream more often. Yeah, the internet's pretty bad. I'll sometimes stream more often, but my current schedule is every Thursday evening. So I'd be happy to have you all join on next Thursday, if not before then. And so wherever you are, whatever you're working on, I hope you have fewer bugs than I do, and I'll catch you next time. And you have a good evening or morning, wherever you are. Thanks.